my 30s, I got pregnant and I got really fat really fast. And I didn't realize like the food that I was eating would make me feel mentally so crappy. The happiness I felt as a child went away. And I just thought that was part and parcel with being an adult. So I was like pregnant for, it felt like 4 years. Pregnant and nursing for years. Researching later in life, I think I had endometriosis, and I think that was majorly caused by my diet. I would have excruciating, painful menstrual cycles. On the carnivore diet, within 2 weeks, I had my first menstrual cycle, and I was like, why don't I feel anything? I remember like lying to my dad once. I'm like, can I have some money? Are you gonna buy French fries? And I'm like, no.
Welcome again. We have with us Alia today. She's going to share a success story with us. And Alia is apparently in Colombia. So Alia, if you'll just share a little bit about your background and we'll get into your story. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So I am from Chicago, born and raised, loved it there. In 2015, I came to Colombia and I met my husband. And we started a family and we have 2 kids, 7 and 5. And I work from home and I raise my kids, and that's the long and the short of it. More about my background is that as a child, I was very happy. I was like a happy, cheerful child. And even in my 20s, I was like a go-getter. Let's say in my 30s, I got pregnant and I got really fat really fast. And I didn't realize like the food that I was eating would make me feel mentally so crappy. I'm sorry. And this went on for years. I'm just doing the fast version of the story. But as a kid growing up in Chicago, I was happy and cheerful but I ate the standard American diet. So I've always had an issue with my weight. And then in my 30s, being pregnant, it came to a head where I was like obese, and the happiness I felt as a child went away. And I just thought that was part and parcel with being an adult. Does that make sense? You like get into this cynical state of mind that, you know, you get older and things just aren't as cool as they were when you were a kid. And so that's when at one point I was like, I'm so sick of this. I've studied this carnivore thing for a while now. I'm just going to do it. Like all else has failed. This has got to work.
Just before we get into that, I'm just curious about, you met your husband, moved to Colombia. How was that for you? How is Colombia? I've never been there, but I've been to South America a few times, but not Colombia. And how different was it? You had to learn Spanish, I assume, I guess.
I do speak Spanish. I think that was the hardest part of my transition, was learning a new language, but I love it here. The culture is so different. In fact, I went to the US recently, and I can get into that a little bit later. But I was like shocked going back to the US, like how different things are. People here, they look you in the eye, they smile, everyone's talking to everybody. I know all my neighbors. I don't know all my neighbors. I live in a huge condominium, but people are so friendly here. This is known as the friendliest country in South America. People are so nice, so friendly, and it's beautiful. It's unbelievably beautiful. And it's perfect weather all year round.
Nice, yeah, and obviously it's on the coast, so you've got obviously access to the Gulf. And so let me get back. So you got pregnant, you gained weight, you were on a standard diet. What did you try? I'm sure you tried other things before you did carnivore.
Oh yeah, sure. So I'll just say, like, my first pregnancy, that was 8 years ago. My son's he's 7.5. I'm like 5'3". I just want to give people an idea. I'm 5'3". I was maybe 150 pounds-ish, around there. I wavered. Around 160, 140 back and forth is where I stayed for many years. In that pregnancy, and it felt like weeks, I gained 80 pounds. Like, I just looked fat. I didn't look pregnant. And people are like, eat what you want to eat. You're eating for 2. That's totally not true, by the way. You're not eating for 2. There's never any circumstance in a pregnancy you're like eating for 2 full-size human beings. So 80 pounds. I then got pregnant 11 months after my son was born. So I was like pregnant for, it felt like 4 years. Pregnant and nursing for years. That's also really draining on your body and your hormones and how you feel physically. So once my daughter was born, I started researching the ketogenic diet. And so I attempted that many times over 6 years. But here in Colombia, like pork would make me feel bad. And I just got the idea that red meat is so bad for you. This is what I would hear from my husband's family. Red meat's so bad for you. So my way of dieting or trying to lose weight and pretending to do keto was like iceberg, lettuce, salads, tomatoes, and chicken. Mm. So that's going to make you feel really bad.
Yeah, I can see that. I'd be hungry with that. Yeah.
And so I attempted that many times. And then I attempted eating kale shakes, spinach or juices, and all these things because I was trying to lose weight. I was so unhappy with how my body had gotten. And nothing worked. All that stuff didn't work. And I don't say that keto doesn't work. In fact, like I wouldn't say I'm a perfect carnivore. I'm like extremely low carb, extremely high animal, like I eat lots of cow. But I never did like keto good. I did it very bad. And that's so when you're eating like dry chicken and salad, it's so easy to be like, oh, this one pizza's not going to affect me. And then you just go off. And carnivore is so much easier to actually stick to for the long haul.
Okay. And what was I going to say? So when you said you maybe have done some other things that didn't seem to work, the keto is obviously dry chicken breast and lettuce is never going to work, I don't think, for most people. What got you interested in doing carnivore?
I was following Dr. Berg for a while, and he interviewed a guy named, I forgot, Tristan Haggard. Mm-hmm. Maybe you know him. So
he's in Ecuador. He's in your
Yeah, he's in Ecuador. He's like my neighbor. So I watched his interview and I'm like, that's really weird. Somebody can just eat only meat? That seems impossible. But how cool, because a lot of things that he said also resonated with me. Chronic back pain, chronic shoulder pain, all these like inflammation issues that he had went away. So that was my first exposure to it. I actually heard about it on that same YouTube channel years before and was like, nah, eating only meat, that's crazy. You got to eat those vegetables. That's what's healthy. So after that Tristan interview, I just went down the rabbit hole of listening to other carnivores. And still after that, it was like 6 months before I was willing to try it out. But at the end of that 6 months is where I was like, no, I need to do this. And I think nothing else has worked. This has got to work. This must work.
And so you were in Colombia when you started, correct? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How hard was it to initiate it there in Colombia?
Easy peasy. Easier than when I visited the US. So I'll get into that later if you want. My husband has been always my number one supporter. He hasn't cared if I was overweight or whatever, but he's always been like, you need to eat less junk. So starting carnivore was very easy because we got everything out of the house that shouldn't be there. And he never liked vegetables anyways. It was very easy to get the environment appropriately set up for me to do carnivore without having other things that would distract me from it. And the meat here is delicious. It is so good. There you go.
Speaking of, because you said everyone in Colombia thinks red meat's bad for you. And
his mom and his sister. Yeah.
I see. I see.
No, they love meat here. You go to fast food places, there's like fast food steak grills. If we're out at a mall, I just go to one of those fast food steak places and I get a steak made on a grill.
So when you started the diet, because you said you were keto, dry chicken, salad, whatever, and you just said, I'll just have pizza because I was still hungry. So tell me about maybe how you started, how that went.
I think how I started was like eggs and beef, and I started introducing some pork. And I was very strict. I do drink coffee, so that's why I don't know I'll just say I'm super duper low carb. I drink coffee, but that was very easy for me to stick to just the basics: beef, butter, bacon, eggs. And I didn't really have any bad results. Like sometimes you hear when people start, they have that crazy diarrhea or whatever. I didn't have any of that. It's been so long. I've been doing this since March. So I want to say for many years, trying to do keto or carnivore or just being here, trying to eat vegetables or whatever, I had like really bad diarrhea issues for years. And so starting this, it immediately fixed my digestion. I wouldn't say that it was a chronic thing that happened every day, but definitely once a month, I'm having a bout of that irritable bowel, lots of digestion issues. And this like instantly calmed it down. I'm not even joking. It was like within days, I think I noticed an improvement in my digestion. And that was the first thing I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. So it was really easy for me to just keep going because I instantly noticed so many improvements in my life.
What go into those a little bit. What kind of things improved for you?
I would say sleep. Having 2 kids and nursing, and I was sleep deprived for years, and I had a hard time falling asleep and staying asleep. And very shortly after getting the garbage and even plants out of my diet and just eating high fatty meats, my sleep was tremendously improved. I would even go so far to say as I was had a bit of insomnia, and that greatly improved. And I know it has to do with eating fatty meats. Let's see. I wrote a list down here. Within a few days, so my sleep is improved. All of a sudden, I could wake up at dawn. I loved it. I would be full of energy at dawn or 6 a.m. and not groggy. You feel ready to go for the day. That was something I noticed. I think within 12 days, I noticed my chronic back and shoulder pain, very painful, gone. Not gone, 85% improved, or I didn't notice it anymore. I was like, wow, my back doesn't hurt anymore. So it's so funny for me, these things that just improved. My general well-being, at the beginning, I was talking about how as a child, I was happy and cheerful. And then as an adult, or in my 30s and whatever, feeling very cynical. And I guess this is the way life is. And I would think, I wish I could feel as happy as I did as a child. And then one day I was just oh, I just feel so happy. I feel so great. My mood has tremendously improved. And looking outside and seeing the beauty that we have. Do you get what I'm saying? Just observing beauty and being appreciative again and a lot less cynical. I love feeling that. And all of those things happen in 2 weeks of starting to eat this way, but instantly improved digestion. I guess if you feel better physically, you're going to feel better mentally. And when you're not poisoning yourself either with plants or sugar or carbohydrates, those are drugs. They're toxins. They have the same effects as drugs, in my opinion. You get those out of your body, you clean it up, you're going to feel better.
Yeah, your brain is part of your body, right? It's an organ just like anything else. It's affected by what we eat anyway. So yeah, that certainly we see that all the time. There is one more thing
I wanted to bring up about improvements that I noticed, because it's very interesting to me. Growing up in my teenage years, it seemed like I never researched or found out from a doctor, but after researching later in life, I think I had endometriosis, and I think that was majorly caused by my diet as a teenager and as a child. So anyone who's had endometriosis, the reason I bring this up now is that I would have excruciating, painful menstrual cycles almost monthly since the age of 13, debilitating. And so on the carnivore diet, eating all this animal fat, getting all the junk out of the diet, within 2 weeks, I had my first menstrual cycle. And I was like, why don't I feel anything? Why don't I feel the pain? Why don't I feel headachy? Why don't I feel anything negative? And then I had this aha moment that women are not supposed to be going through pain. It doesn't make any sense. That our bodies were designed to torture us. So that was a huge win for me. I will say, after having children, after having babies, that changed a lot. The amount of pain that I experienced during a menstrual cycle dramatically improved. However, when I went on this diet and felt absolutely nothing at all, I was like, oh my God, I want to talk to more girls about this. I want to talk to more women about this, because girls don't need to be suffering. We don't need to be suffering. We just need to be eating appropriately as a human species. And as women, we need to be eating high animal fats, and you're not going to have to suffer. And I truly believe that.
Yeah, I've seen, just because I've seen literally thousands upon thousands of people in this diet, and I absolutely have seen women with endometriosis, if that's what you truly had, that have gotten significantly better. A lot of women have improved menstrual periods. A lot of women have improved fertility and healthy pregnancies. And when it comes to menopause, the symptoms often are much better. And so there's all around, I think, healthy nutrition just impacts every aspect of our existence. And I would argue that animal products are extremely healthy for us, despite what we tend to hear. Let me ask you just a climate not the temperature climate, but a climate about what do we think about food in Colombia? Are they pushing a plant-based narrative? Are they pushing a low-fat narrative? Or do they just say, just enjoy your food and eat like whole food? Is there some sort of national guidance on what you're supposed to eat over there?
I haven't looked into like the government, what the government says you should eat here, but maybe I will now. But generally, I want to say this. Here, you're not going to find the obesity that you find in the US. People look skinny. They're generally happy, but they do have a diet of rice, beans, chicken. They will eat meat, but some salad, but there's definitely like a rice and beans thing. There's a lot of corn because they eat something similar to a tortilla. So it's very curious to me that generally that's the type of foods that they eat, and you don't see what in the US in terms of health. They do love ice cream here. I noticed that. If you go to the mall, like so many people are walking around with an ice cream cone, adults, children, elderly. But no, people physically look healthier. And I just wonder if that also has to do with the fact that I don't think the fast food lifestyle is not here. Yes, there's fast food restaurants, but on every corner, there's a fast food restaurant drive-through. There's no Starbucks every 25 seconds from you filling you full of sugar. It's a different culture that way. I think people tend to eat more closer to natural foods versus highly ultra processed foods. And then my friends think it's very interesting that I'm eating only meat, but nobody said anything negative about it.
Yeah, and I can imagine you said it's got a great climate, so probably people have a lot more time out walking around rather than being in Chicago. I used to live up near there, and I know it's 6 months out of the year it's cold and gray, and it's not so fun to be outside.
Or 9 months, depending on the year. Yeah, that's a good point that you bring that up. We were visiting Chicago, and I was shocked. Like, my diet, I was like, this can't affect me so bad. And I went off and I gained weight and my back pain came back. But what shocked me more was my son. He's 7. He's a perfectly healthy little child and his face got swollen. I was like, one day I looked at him, I'm like, how did you get fat? This is so crazy. Like, it's so crazy to me how fast when you go off and eat what's generally considered like normal food in the United States, how south your body goes so fast. And then on the reverse side, coming back home. Oh, so we're in Chicago. It's like winter-ish time. You can't play outside. It's freezing like you just brought up. We're stuck inside. He's watching movies, doing whatever. We come home. He's again outside 5 hours a day. We live in like a gated community and the kids just go outside. It's a huge park. There's football field, basketball, tons of pool. The kids are literally outside for hours in the sun. And they leave at 3 and they come back at 8 o'clock at night, for instance. And my son's 7 and he just goes and plays all day. So that's also part of the culture. Also, yeah, we're outside a lot. We're doing things. We're walking. And that's totally a different culture than in the US. You're driving everywhere. You're not walking. So yeah, I just wanted to point the two differences because I recently re-experienced the US. One, how fast you gain weight and feel like crap again, and how fast your children will gain weight. I was like, no wonder childhood obesity in the US is so prevalent because it's just so easy. In 2 weeks, my son, his face looked totally different. He had a belly. I'm like, oh God, we got to go home now. I've done something terrible. I made a bad choice.
Yeah, it's pretty striking. And you talk about the food in Colombia. Obviously, they're eating meat, sounds like, to reasonable amounts. But they're not eating all the ultra-processed garbage that we are subjected to here in the United States. And that clearly is a difference. I don't really care what your belief is about plant-based or animal-based. I think it clearly is all this ultra-processed garbage, which they're trying to convince the U.S. is healthy. Now, we're seeing like the USDA coming out saying, oh, it can be healthy and ultra-processed foods are fine. And it's almost like gaslighting. You can see it's like, no, it's clearly not. But that's what they're trying to push on us. And so it's good that you get that contrast. I got to this is a general question. I've always associated Colombia with drug cartels and all that stuff. Is that still a significant sort of, does that affect you or does that even exist much anymore?
No, not at all. I live in, I don't know, a beautiful gated community in one of the safest cities in the country. It's called Pereira. It's like I live in the center of the coffee region. So there's coffee farms everywhere. And I've never experienced not once what people stereotypically think about Colombia. I think sure that was maybe in the early 90s, maybe in the 80s that was actually happening here, but I haven't experienced that. All of it I've ever experienced is beautiful people, so friendly, so nice, and a beautiful country.
And are you is that on the coast? Is that?
No, I'm in the center of the country. Sure. It's half an hour, 40 minutes from the coast if you take a plane. Everything's really close. The country's like the size of Texas. It's so small.
Well, Texas is bigger than most countries.
Yeah, that's true.
European countries. So Texas is not that small, but yeah, it's still, it takes you a day to drive across Texas. I've done it a few times. It's a long drive.
Oh, wow. That's long.
What negatives? Because I always like to, let's talk about it.
Sure.
Are there any negatives
Sure.
to the diet that you found? Obviously, there's maybe social stuff, but any physical negatives or health negatives that you've noticed?
I just noticed at the beginning, if I ate too much pork, I would feel nauseated, specifically pork belly. And I think if I think of negatives, that was the only thing, was figuring out for myself what is an appropriate amount of fat that won't make me nauseated, but also makes me feel good. And I think you need that could be a negative, but you're the one eating it. If you overeat on carnivore, you'll feel really bad also, but it's almost so hard to overeat. But that is really the only negative I've seen personally, was just adjusting the right amount of fat that I needed to eat. And that's not negative, it's something I need to do.
Because you said pork belly, which is obviously very fatty, and I've had it a few times, and it's quite good. But yeah, you're right. If you eat too much of it, you're like, whoa. What about pork in general, like pork loin?
I don't really eat any other pork. I just eat pork belly.
Okay.
Because bacon here sucks. Okay, so bacon in Colombia sucks. The beef is great. The bacon sucks. So I go to pork belly.
They don't know how to do bacon. So, and the beef there, like I said, what does it cost? Can you put it in terms of US dollars, perhaps?
Yesterday my husband bought, they called it like the tomahawk section. And so it had some ribeye and some ribs on it. They took the bones out for us. That was approximately 10 pounds, and I think it was like $50. I don't know. Is that good?
$5 a pound is pretty darn good for a ribeye, if that's what that is. So, yeah, that's quite good. In the U.S., you're going to be paying more like $12, $13 a pound right now, depending where you go. Some places higher. But
they're little small ribeyes, but they weren't like these big ones that you can find in the U.S.
Yeah, but still, if they're $5 a pound, you can eat two of them. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
And speaking of that, you said you'd hovered between 150-ish at 5 foot. I think you said 3. Where do you find yourself these days?
Okay, so first we need to go back to when I started carnivore. I was 209 pounds, 209, almost 210 pounds.
Okay.
And so I had lost 32 pounds. At my lowest point, I gained some when I went back to Chicago. Like I just lost another 7 pounds just coming back in the last few days. But so I had lost 32 pounds. So I'm about 180 and I want to lose the rest of it. It became harder for me to lose weight, and it became very easy for me to gain weight after I had kids. So I consider losing 32 pounds a huge success story, because I hadn't been able to do that in years. And this is the only way that it's been able, eating tons of fatty meats is the only way that I've been able to do that.
Do you find a difference in your appetite compared to even keto? Do you notice a difference?
Yeah. And like I said, when I went to Chicago, I went back into bad habits and noticed that you just eat to eat. And it's really stupid. And on carnivore, you don't eat to eat, you eat to live. Like you eat because you're bored. And when you're on that diet, you eat because you're bored, you eat because it's there. This is how I have always been. So being on carnivore, it's helped me control like irregular eating habits. And it's just so easy. Oh, you just eat when you're hungry. Maybe I eat 2-3 times a day on this, sometimes once a day.
Yeah, fair enough. And you said you got to get your fat amount right. How much fat do you think you typically eat, or do you have an idea?
I have no idea. A couple of eggs. I don't know, half of that's fat, a ribeye or some other cut of meat. And I do like butter. I don't know. I'm not good at measuring things. I just know that I'm either hungry or I'm not. And if I'm hungry, I try to eat as much fat as possible to satiate for longer. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. And you said, is your husband now you said he was doing it?
Yeah, basically. So my husband has always been thin. Even when I left and I came back, I'm like, how did you lose weight? He went even more carnivore because he doesn't even like cooking. Lots of fasting, less cooking. I'm like, I can see all your muscles now. So he's very carnivore, but if we go outside, he might have an ice cream cone. Like I said, it's part of the culture. But he doesn't gain weight. When I say he lost weight, maybe he lost like a couple pounds and now he looks very muscular versus having some extra. Yeah. And my kids, they eat a lot of meat. Yesterday, they asked for some rice. I'm like, okay, I don't like it. Don't know why you do. I think that's a cultural thing. But oftentimes they're just eating just meat, and we have fruit for them in the house. Yeah. Like a Paul Saladino sort of carnivore.
I see. Okay, for the kids, yeah, sure,
Yeah.
fair enough. Yeah, and my kids are similar. They'll eat some fruit, but they eat a lot of meat as well. And
Yeah. I mean, sometimes if they go out, they'll ask they want KFC, which is really funny. And I don't want to say for my kids, no, you can't have it. I don't want them to have such a weird idea of only eating meat. I want them to experience, decide for themselves. And again, going back to recently visiting Chicago, we went out to some restaurant. My son's, the food's delicious here, but why does my stomach hurt? So you get some intuitive eating also. Okay, these foods are going to make your stomach feel bad, and these foods are going to make you feel good and want to go play outside more. I'm glad he got, also for him, the two different views.
Yeah. It's good to expose you and tell your kids how important nutrition and how it makes them feel and what it does to their bodies. Because a lot of people don't get that. It's what tastes good and what's cheap, typically, is how we typically decide.
Right. Exactly.
What about dairy products? Are you a dairy person? Do you have much of that?
I try not to be. If I eat too much dairy. That's, I think, what made me go off when I went to the U.S. The dairy here isn't very good, actually. I don't like it very much. Compared to the U.S., the cheeses are so tasty. And I think that's where I started eating more and more dairy when I was visiting. And then it slid from there. So we have dairy in the house. We'll have yogurt for the kids also, or maybe sometimes kefir, sometimes cheese. And I don't think those things are necessarily bad, but for me, I should reduce that. I should not have a lot of that.
Yeah, you said the dairy is not very good in Colombia. It just doesn't taste good to you, or what? What's that?
It just doesn't taste good to me because I'm used to sharp cheddar and living close to Wisconsin, really good cheeses, and here it's just bland.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
What about outside of changing your diet? Did that lead to any other changes in behavior, health behaviors?
Sure, I think so. Like I said, in my 20s, I was a real go-getter, and then having kids and just starting this thing of eating badly all the time, it brought my whole mood down. And at one point, I realized I felt happier. I want to say that I started doing a YouTube channel the same day as my carnivore journey, or 3 days afterwards. I'm I'm going to document this like so many other people. So just adding the fact that I wanted to add something additional to my very busy, stressful life. That was pretty cool because I felt like I needed to talk about this, but I also felt the energy to do it. Oh yeah, I forgot. Within days, I was like, hey kids, let's not watch movies. Let's go to the park. It's literally 20 feet away. Let's go to the pool. It's 20 feet away. We moved here so I could go to the pool, and I was hardly going to it. And I'm not really going to it right now, but I will again. But we're going outside every day. These are things that I wasn't doing. I would prefer, like I said, I work from home. Here's the door. I walk out the door and I want to go sit on the couch and watch movies. So that was before. But within days of starting Carnivore, my whole mindset also changed of having more energy and wanting to do more things actively, more activities, and more fun things with my kids.
Let me ask you, because you're obviously American from Chicago. Are there other Americans living in Colombia? Is there a sizable population of Americans?
I don't know a lot of them, but there's groups on Facebook that I'm a part of, and there's tons of people here from the U.S. Usually retiree is what I get, or people that can work from home. I see.
Okay. And so you obviously sounds like you like it quite a bit. Obviously sounds like the beautiful weather and tropical kind of environment.
And cheap steaks.
Cheap steaks. Yeah, that's a good one. I keep seeing advertisements for Paraguay. People saying to go to Paraguay. Of course, Paraguay's landlocked down there, a little bit south of you. And what about seafood? Because obviously it's a coastal country. Do you have a lot of seafood options there?
I do. We don't eat them. A lot of it. I eat some fish, and I like fish. I like salmon. I do like shrimp. We don't have it because my son seems to have an allergic reaction, so I just don't want it in the house. But otherwise, yeah, we like fish, and it's good. You can get it fresh from markets. Here, you can go to a grocery store, or you can go to a market or a butcher, and we prefer to do stuff like that because it seems better.
Yeah, I noticed in some places the butcher is still very prominent. They've separated out in the stores more for your packaged goods, and then you go to the butcher or the fishmonger or whatever for the individual things. Is that still pretty prevalent in Colombia where you
in fact, we order from different butchers, actually. We get our pork from one guy, and we get our other cuts of meat from another guy, and they just deliver it to our house. So my husband's, since we started doing this, developed relationships with our local guys, and that's really helpful. And I totally recommend you doing that if you're on the carnivore diet. Develop a relationship with a butcher, and you'll get good meat.
Yeah, butchers are good friends to have for sure. There's no doubt about that. And do you know, I don't know, is everything in Colombia a grass finished type of animal, or do you know what the animals?
I don't think so, because it doesn't say, it's not promoted that way. But when I went to the US, here we'll pause for a second. My mom, many years was vegan, and then she went vegetarian. And then recently, since I've been on carnivore, started eating fish. I'm happy about that. So the reason I bring that up is when I visited her, she only wanted to buy me grass-fed, organic, treated meats. And I tried the grass-fed meat. I'm like, Mom, this is disgusting. This tastes so bad. Just give me the cheap stuff. So I don't think it's grass-fed here, because it didn't taste bad. It tastes delicious.
Yeah. So what about one thing that often people, because you said you were on a ketogenic diet, and some people have issues with, say, electrolytes, cramping, or do you consciously manipulate your electrolyte salt in food?
I do. And I take some other vitamins also. And just if I feel like it, I do take some electrolytes. I take some vitamins. I forgot about that. I did have cramping at the beginning a little bit, and the electrolyte, like leg cramps, and that helped me. Okay. I think it was the magnesium. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it was magnesium or potassium, but that helped me. I think that if you're so bad, if you've been eating so bad for such a long time, your body's so deficient. Like maybe you're doing carnivore for however long you've been doing it, and you eat very good foods. But like people like me that were super obese, super unhealthy, maybe we need to supplement for a little while until we can, like, our body adjusts. It's just my thought.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, I think there's some level of transition, and then there's a maintenance phase for sure.
Yeah.
Do you mentioned like a little bit of the mental stuff. Have you noticed significant, you said you have more clarity of thought. Has it helped you in ways mentally? I don't know what you do for a living, but has it helped with that?
Sure. I research real estate for a living, and you need, for the work I do, it could be very stressful and a little bit boring. Stressful because you have to research really well what you're doing. You have to write reports and stuff like that. And yeah, I noticed it was easier after that. And like as if my mind was not so frantic. I noticed being not so frantic, being more at ease and calmer. I think more than the mental clarity, that is the thing that stuck out for me. I've never been diagnosed with anxiety, and I don't know, but I felt anxious, and I feel way less anxious, way less worried about things. And that just makes life a lot better.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, how much do you eat a day? You said a couple eggs and a little bit of
couple eggs,
steak.
Couple little steaks, maybe some pork. That's about it.
Yeah. and you feel satisfied by that?
Yeah. Some days I'll eat more, some days I'll eat less. Depends how hungry I am.
And so
today I had an egg for breakfast and 3 little steaks, little ribeyes like this.
Cute little ribeyes, huh? From cute little cows. Nice.
And with a little bit of, like a very little bit of Chipotle. Like I say, I'm super low carb if someone doesn't want to call me carnivore.
And do you have any pushback? You said some of the people think you're a little weird, but is anybody like attacking you?
I'm not famous enough yet, but soon enough, I'm sure I'll get some pushback.
When you say you're doing research on real estate, is that primarily for Colombia, or do you do it around the world, or how does that work?
I do. It's in the U.S.
Oh, in the U.S. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're working with U.S. people trying to buy houses and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like the research. It's like homework done for when it's an escrow or people are doing due diligence or stuff.
So you're trying to find distressed properties for people to maybe, I don't know, perhaps utilize.
Yeah, more or less.
What's the reason? What's the, just out of curiosity, because I don't know, maybe I'll move down to South America someday. Who knows? But what's the real estate like down there? How is that? What's the cost of living like in Colombia?
So rent is very inexpensive here. I live in a 3-bedroom apartment, closed, gated community. There's like security guards. I feel like I'm living in like a country club, and I pay $350 a month.
Wow.
However, if I were to buy this apartment, it's like $150,000. And I'm like, this little apartment, as awesome it is not worth that. So there's some discrepancy between, I'm glad the rents are cheap, but I wouldn't buy real estate here yet. Maybe if I want to retire later, maybe. We talked about the price of food a little bit. I think food is cheaper, and I think the quality of food is better. And It's just generally the cost of living is cheaper, but you get a higher quality of life, in my opinion.
Yeah. And you said the kids are out playing outside. When I was a kid, we ran around outside. You leave in the morning after Saturday morning cartoons. You come back when the sun went down. Come home. When the street lights come on, you guys got to come home. That was kind of the typical thing. And nowadays, at least in the U.S., that doesn't seem to happen as much because I don't know why.
Everyone's on their phones and nobody's talking to each other. I don't know. I'm not sure. But I think the culture has changed. But yeah, the kids are outside all the time. Even we have a private tutor that comes and is working with our kids every day. And the kids, she's here from 8 to 3, and the kids were outside playing at 8 o'clock in the morning or before she got here. And then afterwards, they're either going to go outside or we're going to go do something as a family, for instance. But yeah, they're outside. And I love that. I love that because it's also part of keeping them healthy. Like getting the sunlight, running around. This morning, my son's, so I should take, it was a vitamin. He's like, this is going to help my body so that I can run faster. Yep. And eating meat too.
Good for you. And you said there's not much childhood obesity there in Colombia, whereas we see it.
No, it's very rare that you see an overweight child. And if they're overweight, they're like a little chubby, but not like extremely overweight. I will mention, I think when I was 10 years old, 1993, I was like 100 pounds and my favorite food was French fries. So I think 100-pound 10-year-old is already obese in 93. And I just actually, as I'm telling you this, I remember lying to my dad once. I'm like, can I have some money? Are you going to buy French fries? And I'm like, no. So that's why I consider it like drugs. You're like addicted. You're going to lie to get what you want.
Speaking of that, I've seen some countries in South America talking about restricting, banning, limiting ultra-processed foods. I don't know if Colombia is one of those, but that's been talked about. Do you know if that's anything about that's going on there?
The current president, I think it was the current president, but they imposed a tax on things that are like soda. Like you're going to pay more money if you want to drink soda, like Pepsi. So it's not expensive, but it's made so it's a higher price. You will find like cigarette warnings. You'll find like a cigarette warning on like something that's full of sugar. This is high in sugar, high in salt, high in fat. So they're a little bit confused on what's bad for you. If it's high in animal fat, I don't think that's bad for you, but they're going to put it there. So there's like a label. Has a high amount of sugar on it. I do know that they've imposed taxes on things that are ultra processed. And I do specifically remember the soda being one of them. I don't remember other stuff.
So you can buy a ribeye steak for $5 a pound. How much can you give me some examples of prices of maybe more processed foods? You ever notice that? I'm just wondering where that
I think
falls.
You can buy, so here people don't generally have toasters. So there's pre-toasted bread and you'll get 6 little pieces of pre-toasted bread in a package. And I think that's $1 or $2. I don't go to McDonald's. I wish I did just so I could have some prices. I went to McDonald's a couple of years ago and I'm like, why is this $7 at Colombia? For instance, some burger or some meal or something, when in the US it would have been cheaper. I used to go to Starbucks. Starbucks is pretty expensive here, but let's say it's comparable to US prices. So it's crazy that it would still cost similar here.
Yeah.
When you can go to your guy on the corner, just get a nice coffee for 25 cents.
And is Colombia a fairly prominent agricultural country? What do a lot of people do? There are a lot of farms and ranches and plantations and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I live in the coffee region. Several of our neighbors have coffee farms. They live here in this condo that we live in, but they have a coffee farm. Or we have good friends and they have a coffee farm 20, 30 minutes from here. We went to their farm once and they have like 50,000 coffee trees. The other things that I've seen here are sugarcane and I think corn. Sugarcane and corn, but definitely coffee is one of the highest things exported out of the country when I did research.
Yeah, I can remember seeing Colombian coffee when I was a kid being talked about how great it was. I don't drink coffee. I just never got it.
Good for you. Don't start.
Are you a coffee drinker?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah,
I think I'm going to give it up for a month in January and see what happens.
Yeah, Carnivore month coming up in January, the 7th year.
Okay, perfect. I'll have to be strict.
Might be a good chance to do that. Yeah, for sure. So anyway, is there anything else you want to discuss before we got a little bit of time left? I want to make sure you get to chat about everything you want to talk about.
I really just I know maybe my story doesn't sound super like amazing, like I cured my diabetes or whatever, but just being happier and being there for my kids more and being more present and feeling better and like physically, mentally, spiritually. I think we shouldn't downgrade that. And I think everyone should feel happy. That's one thing I noticed. I went to Costco the second day I was in the US. I'm like, why is nobody smiling? And I'm curious if it's the food they're eating and they're feeling so bad. You know what I mean? Everyone deserves to be happy and feel good and like really enjoy life. And our nutrition plays such a key. And I want to say people should do their research and not just go blindly into anything, but definitely don't overlook this and give it a try. Improve sleep, improve mood. It's great. You can start enjoying life again.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's great. Yeah, and you don't have to have some horrible disease to try it. Like I said, I tell people it works great. It's good for that for sure, but if you want to try it for just to feel a little better, it's worth it. At least experiment and see what works for you. Do you have a social media presence? Are you doing any social media stuff you want to share?
I do have a YouTube channel, and it's just my name. That's why I put it here, Alia Wells. You're welcome to come and check it out. I talk about my story, and I've also have interviewed other people. And that's why I say a lot of people I've interviewed have lost hundreds of pounds. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. I've lost 30. But I feel 1,000 times better.
Yeah, sometimes not so much what you lose, but what you gain, and you gain better quality of life, and that's just as important as losing any pounds. So
exactly. Oh, I totally forgot to mention something that I would like to mention here. I believe do you know Carrie from Homestead How?
I do, yeah.
Okay. After starting Carnivore, I ran into his channel, and his story really resonated with me, and I almost wanted to cry listening to it. And so I reached out to him one day, and I'm like, hey, I want to do fundraising for you. So he's putting together a documentary, and so we've been fundraising, and I'm working with him, and I think it's called Hope Healing Humanity, and he started doing that. But it's another thing I've started since doing Carnivore is helping to do that documentary, and I think that's going to help a lot of people also once it gets out on Netflix or whatever.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. I've talked to Carrie, and I've interviewed him, and he's interviewed me, and I told him I'd be happy to support his documentary. In fact, there's somebody coming to my house to film a documentary this afternoon on a different one. So there's a lot of people that are having an interest in what we've been doing, what we've been able to show, because clearly when I first started doing this, there was a few people that said it got better and everybody ignored you and thought you're crazy. Now it's literally, there's hundreds of thousands of people now that have experienced the benefits of a meat exclusive or a meat heavy diet.
Yeah.
So you can't ignore it anymore. And so it's great to see people doing that have more talent than I do. So your YouTube channel is Alia Wells, and you're in Colombia and having a good time, and good for you. And thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I think that's it. Thanks, Alia.
All right,
appreciate it.
Thank you.